Hello, everybody, and thank you for listening. This is Sinead, and you're listening to Firestarter Radio. Today, I am joined with author and researcher Eric Dubay. Eric is the author of several books, including The Flat Earth Conspiracy, Spiritual Science, Asbestos Head, and 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. Eric is also the man behind the Flat Earth Conspiracy documentary. Eric is a 32-year-old American who now lives in Thailand and teaches yoga and Wing Chun part-time while exposing the New World Order full-time. Thank you very much for joining me today, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
I have been looking into your work for a bit now, and at first when I saw some of the Flat Earth stuff, I thought, oh my God, people really believe this? And then I started to look into it a little bit more, and I thought, you know what? He's bringing up some good questions, and you know, you never want to rule anything out and say that we absolutely know everything. I think it's really important to keep an open mind and, you know, not be naive about things and gullible, but to really ask questions. And the truth fears no investigation, so why not ask some questions? So thanks again for joining me today. I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about your journey to making some of these realizations and coming to some of the conclusions that you've come to regarding Flat Earth, you know, the powers that be, Zionist control, all of the good stuff. So maybe you can just give us a brief history of how you came to some of these conclusions.
Sure. I started studying conspiracies and things in my early 20s, got into Alex Jones and David Icke and some of the other conspiracy figureheads that are out there. Over time, I see them as gatekeepers now. They seem to be there to just get you, the people that get so far awake. They don't want you to awaken completely, so they position these people there to make sure that doesn't happen. So nowadays I've been into the Flat Earth and Holocaust and Zionism and many other things. Been writing books, making YouTube videos. So the process has just been a long one of going through all the research I can find of what's really going on, and that's brought me to the Flat Earth truth, which happens to be the mother of all conspiracies, and in some ways one of the easiest of all conspiracies to prove.
Right. Now, when did you first start thinking, you know, we may not be on a ball? I know we're all taught that from a very young age, and we're taught not to question it because it's science, and science says it's so it must be. So when did you kind of start to question the ball Earth theory?
Well, yeah, right away when I was in school and they were teaching the ball theory, I never quite bought the whole thing. It didn't make any sense that the oceans could stay on a spinning ball, but they told me that there's something called gravity that exists that's able to keep the buildings, people, and the oceans stuck to the underside of a spinning ball. But, of course, this doesn't make any sense. If there's a force strong enough to hold water stuck to a spinning ball, then how can fish and other creatures swim through it? It would be like a solid gel being stuck there. And if the atmosphere is stuck to it through gravity, as they say also, that would also be a spinning gel type of thing. So how could bugs and birds take off and fly in all directions so easily? So basically this gravity is super strong when they want it to be, so it can hold things onto their ball Earth. But it's also super weak, so it can allow little bugs and birds and everything to fly unabated in all directions. Gravity is really their catch-all phrase, their excuse for everything else they can't explain away. So not only does gravity supposedly do this, but it also causes the planets to all become spheres, they say. Gravity is what caused the Big Bang out of nothing, somehow, they say. They say gravity is what keeps the moon in orbit. They say gravity is what causes the tides on the Earth. But in actuality, gravity is still just a theory. They haven't proven gravity. They say that gravity is the ability of a mass, by virtue of its mass alone, to cause other smaller masses to stick to or orbit around it. In some cases, they say, like, the buildings and the people were all stuck to the ball Earth, so gravity causes us to stick to the Earth. But they also say that gravity causes the moon to revolve around the Earth. So they're saying sometimes gravity causes things to revolve around things, sometimes gravity causes things to stick to things, but in actuality they haven't come up with any practical example. There's no experiment that's ever been done that shows a mass, by virtue of its mass alone, causing other smaller masses to stick to or orbit around it the way they claim planets and moons and suns and everything do in this heliocentric ball model. So gravity is the glue that sticks it together, but it's still, hundreds of years in, has not been proven and remains a theory.
Right. Yeah, that's often what I hear from people when I try to ask them questions regarding, how are the waters of the oceans able to stay, intact on this ball Earth theory? And they say, well, gravity. But, I liked your description of the bugs and things flying, so I guess gravity only works at certain times. So yeah, there's a big hole in that theory, and it's never quite made sense to me. And I just thought it was, I'm not very scientifically minded, and I just, I can't wrap my head around these complex, elaborate mathematical equations, and, so I just kind of considered, I'll never get it. But there really are some big holes in these theories, and they need to be investigated. I was wondering if we could maybe go over a few different arguments that people would give against your flat Earth theory, and maybe you could explain your perspective on some of those things. I was thinking we can maybe start with the images that we have seen that NASA has released to the public. People will say, well, what are you talking about, Sinead? We have seen pictures of the Earth, and it's a ball. We've seen pictures of the International Space Station, and we see them up there floating around, so how could they be lying to us? Maybe you could address that argument.
Right. So the main proof that people cling to as to why they believe they're on a spinning ball is that they've seen it in pictures or videos. They certainly haven't seen it with their own eyes or felt it in their own experience, because anytime we look at the horizon, or anytime an amateur balloon or rocket is sent up, the horizon is completely flat, 360 degrees around, and it rises to the eye of the observer all the way up. And this is only consistent with a flat plane. It's absolutely impossible on a ball, no matter how big the ball is, for the horizon to rise to the eye level of the observer as they gain altitude. So this is one proof of a flat Earth, and this is your common sense perspective. If nobody told you were on a spinning ball, you would see the flat horizon and assume the Earth was flat. Now, you also don't feel or notice any sort of spin happening. They say that the Earth is spinning eastward at 1,038 miles per hour. If that's the case, you should be able to feel it. They say gravity sticks the atmosphere to it, and it spins so perfectly that you can feel the slightest westward breeze, but you'll never be able to feel or notice or observe or experimentally verify this supposed 1,000-mile-per-hour eastward spin. So nobody would come to these spinning ball conclusions on their own. But because we've been shown these videos and these pictures from NASA, everyone just kind of, it's the end of the story there. But that's like if you saw the movie Gravity with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, and you said, well, the Earth's a ball. I saw it. I saw Sandra Bullock. She was in space. She was there. But that's what NASA is. NASA is just another division of Hollywood. It's all fake images, fake videos, provably CGI. People have broken down, even their most recent footage just came out last week. They claim this epic footage, they called it, from a million miles away, satellite.
Perfect timing, right, Eric, as all of this flat Earth information is coming out. Oh, we conveniently found another picture of the Earth. Here it is, guys. Believe us.
Oh, it's terrible, though. I mean, it's so clearly a cartoon animation. Like, they're not even very good at this CGI thing.
No.
Some of the other space agencies around the world, like JAXA, the Japanese, and the Chinese ones, they're even worse. The stuff they release, their moon footage and stuff.
I often think they're trying to rub it in our faces, just how gullible and stupid we all are just to believe their movie magic. And I honestly think that they do it on purpose now to not even try to make it convincing, because they get off on that. It's funny to laugh at all the minions, The
duper's delight, they call it, that psychopaths get when you pull one over on them. I think the people that are doing this, these Masons at NASA and everything, that when they're laughing in the control room, congratulating each other, they're just congratulating on another successful hoax pulled off. Yeah. They want you to think they're just scientist nerds getting all giddy about all these little rocket launches and whatnot they've done.
Right. And don't they use the term ribbons of imagery where basically they have to, take their ribbons of imagery and then use their computer graphics to bring it all together, because I guess their technology isn't advanced enough to shoot pictures of the Earth, but they can shoot galaxies millions of miles away with clarity.
Good point. Yeah, this is the excuse they use when people pick out certain images and say, look, this is clearly a CGI image right here. This is not a photograph like you're saying. And when people do that, they say, okay, what it is it's ribbons of imagery taken from several satellites and spliced together in Photoshop. And so they'll admit that it's from Photoshop. People have found signatures to prove that it's from Photoshop. In many of the moon pictures, we've found the Earth pasted into the photograph. You can see the rectangular clip art, the clip around it, and the blackness of space, supposedly. Things like this.
Yeah.
So they've been caught. They've been found out. The evidence is voluminous. It's just a matter of waking the people up to showing them all the evidence that exists that we haven't been to the moon,
right,
and that all these pictures of a ball Earth are fake, and that the Earth is flat and motionless just as it appears to everyone, and at any altitude that anyone but these official space agencies claim to achieve.
Right. And, I forget, and I don't know if you know it off the top of your head, I forget how fast they tell us that we're actually spinning. Isn't it something like 666,000 miles an hour or something strange with the number 666? Or am I?
They've got the Earth tilting back 23.4 degrees, and that leaves a remainder of 66.6 degrees, so depending on how you measure from. Subtracted from 90, so you've got that 666.
Okay,
and
that's what I was thinking of, I think.
Yeah, and then you've got several motions that they claim the Earth is going under. They say it's spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. It's going around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, while the sun goes around the Milky Way galaxy at 500,000 miles per hour, and the Milky Way galaxy shoots through the infinite universe at 670 million miles per hour. These are all motions that they claim exist that we never feel or measure whatsoever. You can see Polaris remains exactly where it is, and all the constellations and other fixed stars remain in their fixed positions relative to one another, day after day, week after week, century after century. They just stay right there, but they keep claiming that we're undergoing all of these various contradictory motions here and there, spiraling through the universe, yet none of it is evident anywhere.
Right. It's interesting when I bring up that point to people, I say, why don't we feel that we're moving? Why doesn't a plane account for the curvature in their flight patterns? And they'll say, because of relativity. So how would you dismantle that argument?
So relativity is just another excuse, like gravity and all these other things, to account for why you can't trust your common sense. So your common sense says the horizon's flat and we're not moving, and they say, well, that's just relative. If you go up high enough, it'll be curved. Here's a picture, and the atmosphere is spinning perfectly with you, and it's all relative, so that's why you don't notice it. They even say that the reason we only see one side of their spherical moon is that it's spinning at just the right speed opposite to the Earth's spin, so it locks in and we never see any other face but that exact face. That's their explanation for that one. So the idea of relative motion they use over and over again to show why we don't experience any motion. And they'll say, well, it's just relative. You don't experience it because it's relative, or because it's a constant velocity. You'd only feel it if it was accelerating or decelerating. Right. Another false argument. I mean, you can feel motion regardless of whether it's constant or not. They want you to think that you couldn't. I have a weak stomach. I can feel just a very slight motion in a car, 30 miles per hour. Oh, yeah,
exactly. So you're trying to... Right, you're trying to tell me that you can't feel that you're, spinning thousands of miles an hour throughout space. I mean, I'm pretty sure we would all be feeling that. I feel when I'm in an elevator going up one floor, So, again, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's getting us to completely neglect our common sense and to not look at the blatantly obvious that's right in front of our faces that we've known since we were kids, but it's been, programmed out of us. Now, you brought up... Yeah.
They set themselves up as the authority, so you have to listen to them and all their explanations, meanwhile ignoring your common sense and your own experience, which tells you that the Earth is flat and motionless. So they just have to feed you a bunch of lies, a bunch of images, a bunch of relative explanations like this, so that you'll listen to them and let them be your authority instead of let your own senses and intuition be your authority.
Right. Exactly. Science is now the new religion. And it was always my impression that nothing is ever really completely proved necessarily with science. You always want to be asking more questions, and you always want to be looking into new things to reevaluate our theories, make sure, we're saying the right things. But it seems with this quote unquote science, and with a capital S as a religion, that doesn't take place. These are the facts. Everybody in the scientific community agrees, and there's no questioning it.
That's right. Nowadays, when people talk about science, they're always talking about capital S science, which I say doesn't exist at all. And by capital S science, they just mean what the current authority dictates, and that's capital S science. But the word science comes from the scientific method, which is just a method of repeatedly doing experiments to find better, closer and closer conclusions. So, like, the scientific method is great. Testing, observing, experimenting, and debating about the results and trying to find closer and closer conclusions to fit the evidence. That is a great thing, the scientific method.
Right.
And that's what flat earthers are doing in their rebuttals to these ridiculous ball earth myths that have been woven for us. So what we're doing is science, and you can read my 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball book, for instance, and it's full of actual science. Meanwhile, you've got ridiculous explanations like relativity and gravity theories, which are now passing for capital S science, because the current establishment has dictated that this is what science decided. And do you even science, bro? If you don't listen to them, that's their new meme. Like, so if you don't follow the current authority, Neil deGrasse Tyson will say, "Come on, bro, do you even science?" And,
jeez.
You haven't heard that one? I love that.
I haven't. That's hilarious. Neil deGrasse Tyson, that's a whole other topic here. Isn't he now behind the new idea that the Earth is actually pear-shaped, and they were wrong all along, and those images are just wrong, I guess, that they've been showing us?
NASA's official spokesperson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, has recently come out and said that the Earth is not a sphere, as they've been telling us, and not only is it not a sphere, it's not an oblate spheroid, which is another model they'd presented to us earlier. They're saying now it's an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles, bulging south of the equator, thereby looking more like a pear. It's pear-shaped. And so the problem, of course, with this is that they've now been promoting 3 different models. Right. The spherical model, the oblate spherical model, and the pear model now. And NASA's official NASA position, all 3 of these have been spoken by official NASA spokespeople, yet all of the images that NASA gives us, which look clearly like fake CGI anyway, but they're all spheres, they're all circles. So what is this oblate spheroid pear-shaped thing that they're talking about? Why can't we see it at all? And when you say that, they say, well, it's you just can't notice it in the pictures, it's very slight.
How convenient.
Yeah, why even go there,
Right. I mean, if NASA can't even get their stories straight, and we're considered crazy for questioning their ever-changing theories, I mean, come on, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Now, you mentioned the moon, and I've been looking into the moon myself a little bit and noticing that during the day, the moon actually appears transparent. And I listened to one of your interviews where you spoke about, and now I forget the organization who released this footage, but basically it was footage of, I don't know if it was stars or something else that was basically able to pass through the moon. Could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so during afternoons, during waxing and waning cycles, if you notice, you can see through the moon. It's translucent. You can see the blue sky right through it. And the Royal Astronomical Society has many, many times on record, and you can see it on their website, that the planets and stars have been seen through the moon, like in those symbols in Muslim countries. They have a crescent moon and then a star that's occulting the crescent moon. Mm-hmm. That's what they're seeing. You're able to kind of see the star through the moon because it's not solid, opaque. It's translucent or somewhat transparent. You can see through it. In the afternoon, you can see it. And sometimes when stars, or what they call planets, the ancients called wandering stars, when they pass by, you can also see it through it. So it proves that the moon is not a spherical desert planet like NASA shows us that you can land some people on, right, but rather it must be some sort of luminary, a light, translucent, so that you could see through it. It can't be densely physical the way that it's been presented to us.
Right, and we're also told that the moon is reflecting the sun's light, and that is what is illuminating the moon itself. And but that doesn't make sense either, because the supposed moon landing footage, we don't see any kind of shiny material there. We all know it was fake, but if they were trying to be consistent with their story there, they would maybe make it look a little shinier for everybody.
Right, exactly.
But now in your theory, the moon is emanating its own light, which is of a very different quality to the sun, and it's actually a cool light. Is that right?
Yeah, you can measure the moonlight is actually cool. So just by taking a thermometer and putting it in and out of the moonlight and in the shade of the moonlight, the temperature will actually go up in the shade and down in the moonlight, unlike the sun's light, which of course goes up in the light and down in the shade. So if the moon is just reflected sunlight, how can it have opposite properties like this?
Right.
And like you said, you can't see it in any of their fake moon footage. And if it's a sphere, how is a sphere supposed to be reflecting light anyway?
Good point.
What happens when a light hits a sphere is that it all condenses to one point. It wouldn't illuminate outwards in all directions as you can see it does. If you look at the moon, the full moon yourself, it clearly looks like a flat disk, and light is shining outwards from it. It certainly doesn't look like a reflection. It doesn't look like a sphere. And another proof that it's not a sphere is that you see the same face no matter where you are over the Earth. If it was a sphere, someone in the Arctic versus the equator versus the Antarctic should be seeing different faces of the moon. You'll see the same face at different inclinations instead, however. So the same rabbit or the man on the moon, no matter where you are on the Earth, you will always see that exact same face. But it will tilt or turn at 360 degrees as it goes over and around the flat Earth. So depending on where and when you're viewing it from, you'll find it at any of all inclinations. One of the ball Earth proofs they try to point to is they say in the northern hemisphere the moon is always right side up, and in the southern hemisphere it's upside down. And then they'll show you a picture of it right side up in the north and upside down in the south and say, case closed, the Earth's a ball. But in fact, you can, and people on my forum have taken pictures, and time-lapse shows that the moon is actually rotating like it's a disk. Not like it's a sphere rotating, as they claim, but like a disk just rotating 360 degrees over the course of a day. It's like a wheel kind of rolling over and around the flat Earth. That's actually how ancients portrayed it in Egypt and other cultures. They had the sun and the moon as chariots, or drew them as wheels as they revolve over and around the Earth.
Very interesting. Yeah, that just makes a little bit more sense to me, personally. Let's see here. We've got some other typical arguments that people will give for, actually against your theory. Another one that I had in the beginning as well is, well, what are we just going to go over the edge and fall into space? I mean, where's the edge? Because when I hear flat Earth, I picture just a plane floating around in space with edges that I guess you could sail off or fall off. So can you explain in your model how there really is no edge per se, and that we are actually surrounded by an ice wall?
Yeah. So in the ball model, Antarctica is a ice continent on the underside of the ball. In the flat model, Antarctica is surrounding you 360 degrees, holding the oceans in. And in both models, it's true that if you go southwards from anywhere, that you'll eventually reach Antarctica. So this is true, you can think about it, whether you're on a ball or a flat model with Antarctica all around the continents 360 degrees holding the ocean, the interconnected oceans together. It works out the same compass-wise. And actually, think about a compass. If you're on a ball Earth, it's never really pointing to the north, and the south is never really pointing to the south. And east and west aren't pointing that way either, because if you're on a ball, then north would be, you'd have to tilt the compass that way, and south would be pointing off into outer space, right? And so would east and west. So the only way that a compass actually works is the way that the flat Earth is set up, or the way that a ring magnet that's found in loudspeakers is set up, where the North Pole is the only real pole, and it's the center. And the southern circumference, all the way around, is the southern pole, magnetic pole. And then that's a magnet that actually exists. The type of magnet they claim the Earth is doesn't exist. They say that there's a molten magnetic core, which is all speculation because they've only drilled 8 miles down, so they haven't even gotten through their theoretical crust, let alone to their theoretical outer mantle, inner mantle, outer core, inner core, and then this molten metal that's supposedly in the inner core is constantly shifting around in its molten state, so it's causing the north and south poles to constantly move. So this is another convenient explanation they give. So how come nobody can show proof of going to the supposed north or south pole like they do in these documentaries and take out a compass and prove that they are in the north, the magnetic north or magnetic south pole by walking in a circle and showing north to be in every direction? Never happens, I say, because they're never at the pole. They'll tell you it's just their complex ball, molten lava, whatever model that makes it so that they can't prove it.
Yeah, again, another convenient explanation there. And I remember for a while, too, a year or two ago, and sometimes still today, we hear about this coming pole shift that's going to happen, and, it's going to wreak havoc on the world. And, of course it never comes, but I just think it's interesting that this is always like a fear-mongering tactic of the poles shifting. Right.
Yeah, the South Pole doesn't even exist, so
right.
We have to worry about a pole shift.
But you have to worry, though, because it could happen, It's going to happen, okay? Yeah.
They definitely want us worried and scared. That's definitely part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
So in the flat model, Antarctica surrounds us, and as you can see, it is an ice wall and then an ice plateau once you climb on it. And early explorers like James Clark Ross and Captain Cook and the British ship Challenger and some other examples in the 1800s and before, they gave records of taking 50 to 60,000 miles to go around Antarctica, where on the ball model it's only 12,000 miles approximately at that line of latitude where they'd be. So they were taking 3 or 4 years in their trips. They were trying to find inlets into the ice, and they couldn't find it. And they were also found themselves off of their reckoning more and more the farther south they went, which is exactly what you'd expect if you were thinking you were on a ball, and the lines of latitude would get smaller and smaller as you get closer to Antarctica. But in fact, you're on a flat Earth, so the lines of latitude actually get farther and farther apart, lines of longitude rather. And that's why they found themselves out of reckoning, and that's why it took so long to get around Antarctica without ever finding an inlet, is because it's not a tiny continent on the underside of the ball. It's actually a huge circumferential barrier all the way around us.
Very interesting. Now, before I get back to some of the other arguments against your theory, I wanted to ask you if you were familiar with Operation High Jump and Admiral Byrd and what your thoughts are on that, if you are familiar.
Yeah. Well, Admiral Byrd was a known Freemason, and he talked about that quite often. So since the Freemasons are the ones who've been behind the ball Earth deception and NASA right from the get-go, from Pythagoras to Copernicus all the way to Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong nowadays, the priests of NASA, the priests of this ball Earth theory have all been Freemasons. So I don't really trust the hearsay of Admiral Byrd or any other known Freemasons. I don't trust hearsay of even people who aren't Freemasons.
Right, exactly.
I'm looking for evidence and proofs. And so Operation High Jump and the Fishbowl and whatever these may have happened. I doubt they happened the way they say they did.
Right.
They may not have happened at all, and they're just here to prop up this model. So no, I don't put much credence into what Admiral Byrd has to say or what anyone else has to say unless they have physical evidence to back it up.
Right. Now, we hear all the time, too, different theories that the, National Socialists at the end of World War II escaped with their superior technology and are now living in Antarctica. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it is completely bogus and ridiculous, or do you think there might be some possibility or truth to this?
I think that's probably bogus and ridiculous. I don't think Hitler escaped. They own German documents and everything said that he committed suicide and that they took care of his body, and I haven't seen any evidence to go against that claim. I haven't seen any evidence that there's a secret Nazi base in Antarctica, and as far as the Nazis who went into NASA, as far as I can tell, these are the traitors, the German traitors who decided to go work for the enemy. These are the few people at Nuremberg that decided, well, instead of holding out for a failing cause, I'll just jump on board and join the enemy. Isn't that more what happened?
Right, and I mean, we don't even really know if they were forced into it or if it was, you either die, tortured, rot in jail, or you do this. We don't really know, but yeah, they could very well have been traitors. But we hear all the time that, oh, it's the Nazis behind NASA, and oh, it's the Nazis behind this, but it's not. Obviously, if it were the Nazis, we'd be living in a very different looking world.
Yeah, from what I can tell, the only Project Paperclip was just they took some scientists that decided they'd work for the enemy, and they were just rocket scientists, right? So the rockets, this is their ruse. This is how they pull a fast one on us. By shooting rockets high enough, they make us think that there's a magical point up there where things just start floating around in infinite vacuum space.
Right.
So if the Earth was really a ball, you should be able to just fly a plane into outer space. Just go straight long enough, and as the ball Earth curvature drops off, just keep on going straight. In a couple hours, you should be in outer space. But no, that never happens. Nobody's ever performed that test. And when you look at these rocket launches, they always form a parabolic curve. These things never even go straight up. They reach a peak and start falling back down to Earth. You can clearly see every single, even the ones considered successful. Yeah. And they just say that, well, it reaches escape velocity outside of your view, and it's the only reason it looks like it's coming down like that is because it's going over the curvature of the Earth. So more excuses again, and the rockets, the legitimate rocket technology that they brought the scientists in for, that's just to get people to believe that they have actually gotten into outer space and everything. Because I think if they just went there on a plane or something, and no other amateur pilot could do it, they'd know something was up. So they have to have some really expensive, extravagant, cool-looking thing like a huge rocket launch to make so nobody else can do it. So they're the authority once again, and it's such a spectacle that everyone just believes that, it's an amazing achievement of mankind, and they just stick in that kind of mindset instead of being critically thinking and analyzing what they're actually being presented with.
Right, and I know here, I'm in Florida, a couple hours away from Canaveral, and it's right on the water, so it's pretty convenient, you can just kind of have your rocket shoot off out of the view of people and conveniently land in the ocean.
It's exactly what they do all over the world. All the space agencies, they shoot their rockets off over the ocean so that when it makes that parabolic curve and eventually comes right down to Earth, they can pick it up, probably in restricted waters if you
Right, exactly. And, another thing I thought as a child, I went to Cape Canaveral, or Kennedy Space Center, and we saw a shuttle landing. And I remember asking my parents, why does it look like a plane? I was confused. I thought that it would land, it would look different because it was a space rocket or a spaceship, but it looked just like a plane. And I remember thinking, oh, that's weird, as a child even. So, our instincts are usually right, and we are, they're programmed out of us with a lot of repetition and, groupthink. So, moving on to another argument against your theory that would like you to address, if you could, that I hear a lot is, well, we have different time zones. So how on earth would we have different time zones on a flat Earth model? Maybe you can explain that.
So whether the Earth is revolving around the Sun or the Sun is revolving over and around the Earth, the time zones would work exactly the same. So the time zone argument doesn't really work for or against the flat Earth model. In the flat Earth model, the Sun is revolving over and around the flat Earth from tropic to tropic, from winter solstice to summer solstice. And every 15-degree demarcation point is where they say that there's a new hour. So after 24 of those, you've made 360 degrees around, and that's the same as whether the Sun was going around the Earth. The Earth was going around the Sun, the time zones wouldn't be any different. However, if it was that the Earth was spinning around the Sun, then, for instance, when you're on a flight going eastward versus a flight going westward, if the Earth is spinning, then the times should be drastically different, and they're not. In fact, if you're going 500 miles per hour over a ball Earth that's going 1,000 miles per hour, you should never be able to reach your eastward destinations. They should come up behind you before you get to them. So this motion is nowhere apparent, even though they claim it.
Right. Now that we're on the topic of the time zones, it would probably be good to segue into the seasons and how the seasons work on a flat Earth model, because at first I was so confused about how this could work, but then when I saw it all laid out, it made way more sense to me than the ball Earth model, and it was like I had an epiphany. Oh, duh. So maybe you can explain it to people.
Yeah, the ball Earth model has a flaw as well, that they say that winter happens when the Earth is actually closest to the Sun. They have the Earth going around the Earth going around the Sun in an ellipse fashion, and so the points at which it's closest to us, we actually have winter in most places over the Earth, which is weird. And it also doesn't work in their gravity model, where they say that gravity is keeping things spinning in circles. Sometimes it keeps things spinning in ellipses if they want it to, so they change the shapes and stuff all the time. On the flat Earth model, as I said, the Sun is going from tropic to tropic, solstice to solstice. So starting at the winter solstice, the Sun is at the Tropic of Capricorn, and it's making a circular journey over and around the circular flat Earth, with the North Pole in the center and Antarctica, the circumferential barrier all around it. That the Tropic of Capricorn is at 23.5 degrees south latitude. The equator is in the middle. So after 3 months of circling around in a corkscrew pattern, slowly getting narrower as you go, and slowing down as well, so it keeps the same 24-hour pattern in its circle, you pass the equator during the equinox, and then you go narrower and narrower circles to the summer solstice, which is at the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees north latitude. And then the next 6 months, it gets wider and wider circles as it makes a corkscrew journey back to the Tropic of Capricorn. So the moon has a similar journey, though it's a bit slower than the sun.
Now, why is it that the sun appears to be at the same size when it's rising in the morning? It appears to be the same size at its highest point during the day, and then as it sets, it appears the same size. So wouldn't the size of the sun change if it's, passing over us? Wouldn't it get bigger and smaller? And would it also appear different in size depending on the season, seeing as how it would be further away in the winter and closer in the summer? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
The sun does drastically change size depending on the video you're looking at.
Okay.
So, for instance, I'll put video to this audio later. Here you can see the sun slowly getting smaller and smaller as it gets further and further away, and it almost disappears into a pinprick before the light disappears. So sometimes you can see this happening, where the sun is very big when it's overhead, and then as it sets, it clearly gets smaller and smaller due to perspective as it's getting further and further away from you. Now, in other videos, I'll show another one, as the sun gets closer to the horizon, you'll find it actually gets bigger. And so it depends on the amount of water that's in the atmosphere. So usually if it's a humid day or you're looking over the ocean, that's when you usually see the sun to be bigger, brighter, and magnified as it nears the horizon. In dry places, that's when you're going to see it shrink off into the distance. So you actually will see the sun do many different things. Sometimes you'll find it at its biggest point when it's directly overhead. Sometimes it's bigger on the horizon. Sometimes it's on the horizon and just a little pinprick. So it depends on various conditions, how it's magnified.
Right, yeah. And I myself, I haven't really done any experimentation into it, and I haven't, taken too much notice, but I did think, most of the times when I look at the sun, it looks like it's about the same size. So I just wanted to ask you to explain that for me, because I was wondering about that. Now, since we're on the subject of the moon and the sun, could you explain how an eclipse would work in the flat Earth model? Because people will say, oh, well, there are lunar eclipses, so that proves that, the flat Earth model is not correct in their orbits of the sun and moon. So maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, in the ball Earth model, they use eclipses as a proof of the ball because they say that when you see a lunar eclipse, what you're seeing is the shadow of the ball Earth being cast by the sun onto the moon. So they claim that the sun, the Earth, and the moon are all lined up like 3 billiard balls so that the sun's casting the Earth's shadow on the moon as it goes by. However, over 50 times on record, you can see in the Royal Astronomical Society as well, the sun and the moon have been visible in the sky together while an eclipse is happening. So it's absolutely impossible that it is the shadow of the ball Earth causing this phenomenon to happen. If you look to ancient cultures all over the world, they claimed that there was a third celestial body, the same size as the sun and the moon, but it's a translucent dark body. They called it the black sun, or Rahu in Vedic astrology. And so this is what the explanation has been for thousands of years, and then this new ball Earth shadow on the moon explanation came around, and they use it as a proof. But like I said, it's been proven that it couldn't possibly be that because the sun and the moon are both in the sky in the same vantage point from somewhere on Earth 50 times plus, and it still happens today. So it couldn't possibly be this. Whether it's this black sun explanation or not, we need more evidence as far as I'm concerned, but this is what ancient cultures have said.
Right. Very interesting. And you actually made a video about ancient beliefs surrounding the flat Earth, and I was really blown away. In many different cultures, this has been an idea, and it's not, some new thing. It was proposed years and years and years ago, and I think it makes more sense personally. So I just thought that was interesting. I suggest everyone...
It's actually the predominant worldview all over the world
right.
throughout history up until the past few hundred years. Everybody knew it was flat and motionless and that we're the center of the universe.
Right.
It's only recently that we've been molded into a ball and spun in infinite circles.
Yeah. And if you want to not look like a complete lunatic, you're not going to say that the Earth is flat because everyone will think you're absolutely insane.
You've done a good job making that term taboo, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you even used that clip of Obama saying, we're not having a meeting of the Flat Earth Society, and everyone laughs. So funny, Obama.
Yeah, we don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. He had another clip where he was saying that these people, if they were around when Columbus was, they wouldn't believe it. They would have thought the Earth was flat. So, I mean, he's actually having these flat Earth references written into his speeches,
yep.
which is quite interesting. Why is the president having flat Earth ridicule
right.
written into his speeches?
Well, I think we know why. I think they're afraid, and they realize that this is now getting out there like everything else is, too. And they're doing some damage control, which is great to see. It's great to see them be on the defensive and respond to us now. I think it's fantastic, and it's great progress. So back to some of the arguments, and we're almost done with these. I know we talked about relativity earlier, but I always hear about this Coriolis effect and how that explains everything. So maybe you could I guess, debunk the Coriolis effect or elaborate on it further from where you're coming from.
Yeah. So another supposed ball Earth proof is that in the northern hemisphere, sinks, drains, toilets all spin one direction, and in the southern hemisphere they spin the other direction. And this is proof that the Earth is a spinning ball, once again. However, you can find, even within your own household sometimes, drains will drain in opposite directions, let alone opposite hemispheres. So there's, you can see videos on YouTube of people doing this trick at the equator. They'll set up a sink, and then they'll say, this is the equator. It'll be in Ecuador or something. And then they'll have the water will go down straight. And then they'll walk a few paces, and like, okay, now we're in the northern hemisphere. And the water will go one way. And then they'll fill it up again and go down in the southern hemisphere, do it again, it goes the other way. Everybody oohs and ahs, and they give a little tip to the demonstration and move on to their next tourist destination. What is happening is that the water will drain based on either the shape of the basin or the direction that the water is flowing in originally. So this trick is done by just when you fill the water in, you fill it so that it's already spinning in one direction before you pull the plug. And you'll just have to quickly pull the plug, otherwise it'll always look like it goes straight down.
Science with a capital S for you right there.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, you can test this. There's videos debunking this on YouTube. People have found drains going both directions within their own household. And so now it's just yet another lame excuse trying to prop up a dying model.
Yeah. I just think it's really funny, too, that is, the foundation of their theory that water went a certain way down a toilet. Okay? That's science, I guess, these days. Ask no questions. They've got us, we're in good hands, people.
Yeah, NASA got technology that supposedly synthesizes the astronaut pee, and then they're able to drink it. And just this week, they came out with astronaut poop, something that they synthesize.
Oh,
I think so. I didn't read the article. It sounded so ridiculous.
Be surprised.
I think that's what they're trying to get us to believe now, is that the astronauts not only are they recycling their urine, they're now recycling their feces.
And that is a great thing. Yeah. Oh my God. Wow.
Billions of dollars of taxpayer money at work so you can eat your own shit.
I'm so glad that's where my tax dollars are going. It's great. Fantastic. This is progress right here. Learning how to eat our own excrement. Wow. Thanks, NASA. Wow, that's pretty insane. I would highly encourage anybody to look into the International Space Station and just how ridiculous it is. I mean, it's completely unplausible, and it's over the top with the fake hair and the floating around, and it's just, come on, people, just let's think critically here. They're not up there floating around in a space station eating their own poop and pee. I'm sorry, but it's just, if you've got any brain cells left, just look at the footage. It's very obvious.
Absolutely. In the ISS footage, you can see them always doing their Masonic hand signs and whatnot. That they have all these repeat signals that they give to each other, and these ceremonies that they repeat. And so what they're doing with the ISS, it's all video trickery. It's just like that Gravity movie I was telling you. It's like believing that Hollywood is real. That's what they've got you doing, because that's all they're doing. They're on green screens and harnesses. They're up in zero-G planes, faking like they're floating in the infinite vacuum space. What they're really doing for the free-range, shorter shots of the International Space Station, they're in the vomit comet, as they call it. Just planes which have been fitted interior to look like a space station, and they do parabolic maneuvers which allow the people inside and the objects inside to experience a free-fall zero-G effect. And you can spin around and spin things and make little bubbles of water appear, and all the little tricks that they do to fool you into thinking that being an astronaut is so cool and they're in space doing stuff that you could never do, but you can do it. They even have the public on these planes sometimes, so you can see images of videos of people on them, and they're behaving just like these astronauts are behaving on their space station. So the shorter shots are done this way. The longer shots, they're just on harnesses in front of green screens, and this is proven by you can actually see the harness sometimes. And you can also, when you fast forward the footage, you'll see like they're always in threes. Another thing, a Masonic number. The people on the ISS, they'll almost always be in a trio. And over time, you fast forward the footage, you'll notice they don't move laterally whatsoever. They're stuck there because they're on a harness. They only move along one of their axes. And then the third way that they fake it is in dark pools with LCD screens projecting a fake ball Earth underneath them. And this is proven over and over again. Almost every time they release one of these bits of footage outside the ISS, you see bubbles in space.
Right.
And they're air bubbles in the pool. So if you're filming underwater, it's difficult to never film an air bubble. And in fact, almost every new footage they come out with, people find several air bubbles, proving that they are in a pool. And NASA even admits that they do all of their training for these spacewalks, as they call them, in the JLB, I think it's called it's the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, NBL. JLB is another, or whatever. They got so many different, he's flat earther. I'm getting them all mixed up now. They got all these three-letter acronyms that are getting me confused. But anyway, they admit that they do all of their training in these pools. But what they don't admit is that when they're in supposed outer space, they're also in pools, clearly, and we've caught them with their bubbles over and over again.
Right. And I mean, no one ever really thinks, if they were really in space, would that little tiny suit keep them from completely being, their skin being ripped off or just exploding? I mean, wouldn't the human body, if it was in space, what would really happen to it? Would they be protected by their little suit? I doubt it.
Yeah,
if there was this, theory of space that we hear about all the time.
Where the ISS supposedly is up in the thermosphere, it's supposed to be like a couple thousand degrees. I don't know. They're surviving this. And they also say that because the gravity is sticking the atmosphere, spinning atmosphere to the spinning ball Earth, that at the altitude that the ISS is, the atmosphere is actually spinning 17,000 miles per hour. So they claim when you see these shots of them in the ISS and everything looks totally still, that they're actually spinning around at 17,000 miles per hour. But because of relativity and frames of reference and all their little pseudoscientific keywords they use, that's why it doesn't appear that way. It appears like they're still. Right.
Another point that I brought up to someone, and they countered it with their explanation, was the fact that you can see Cuba from the Keys. At least that's what I've heard. Am I right there?
I'm not sure. There are definitely so many places on Earth that you can see much farther than you should be able to see on a ball 25,000 miles in circumference. I'm not sure about that one in particular, but we've got a bunch of them on IFERS, yeah. Right.
Now, their explanation for why this is the case, because I said, at 60 miles away, the Earth would be curving, right? But they said that it's actually a mirage and that the light is reflecting, Cuba or whatever is over there 60 miles away, and that it appears to be closer than it really is because the light is reflecting. Somebody told me it was called a fata morgana or a mirage. So what would you say to that explanation that you're not actually really seeing Cuba or whatever over there, but it's actually a reflection, a mirage? What would you say to that?
When mirages happen, they happen upside down. So if it was a mirage, you should be seeing it upside down. And also, quite a coincidence that if it is a mirage, why do these, like the Chicago skyline mirage, for instance, it's perfectly on the horizon? Why isn't the mirage a little bit above the horizon or a little bit below or whatever? It falls exactly where it would on a flat Earth, so that it, again, it's an excuse. Right. They're just using these terms. What, fata morgana? That's a new one. I haven't heard that. So now, was that Latin or something?
I guess it's the Italian for mirage.
Italian. There you go. Yeah. Well, if you say mirage in Italian, it's even more sciencey. Don't you know that?
Right. Well, it says that the optical phenomenon occurs because rays of light are bent when they pass through air layers of different temperatures in the steep thermal inversion where the atmospheric duct has formed. So.
Obviously.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Now, that concludes my questions I have for you regarding the theory. But now I was wondering, if you could tell me your thoughts on this. I'm sure you've heard of these Illuminati playing cards, and, we've been hearing about them for a while, those of us that have been in the alternative research community. Now, there's one that says Flat Earth on it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they knew that, this information would eventually come out? It's just the timing seems really interesting, and this card is quite peculiar.
Yeah, I wonder if Steve Jackson is aware of the Flat Earth. It seems like he must be a Freemason or somehow involved in the conspiratorial control of humanity to have made such insightful cards in the first place. And the fact that he'd have a Flat Earth card which says on it something like, Flat Earthers may be ridiculed, but they know something, or something along these lines. But, yeah. So I don't know. I think that those cards were probably made by an insider. Yeah. And that's just all it is. He knew what he was talking about. The Flat Earth is a reality. Now,
was it you that kind of first started coming out? You came out with your book and your documentary. Were you really the main player in the Flat Earth community at that point, and now others have kind of jumped on the bandwagon? Or was this being discussed a little bit before you put out your book and documentary? And why do you think it's taken off so fast?
There's been a 600% increase in the Flat Earth keyword since November, when I put out my documentary and book. And there was, like, the Flat Earth Society was online. I restarted the International Flat Earth Research Society in opposition to them, however, because this Flat Earth Society, which has existed for decades now, they're a controlled opposition group that gives terrible Flat Earth arguments to make the whole thing sound silly. So, like, instead of accounting for gravity with the pre-existing laws of density and buoyancy, as every flat earther has for centuries, the Flat Earth Society says that gravity does exist, but it's accounted for in the Flat Earth model by the flat Earth disk constantly rising at 9.8 meters per second, and that accounts for gravity. So that they give stupid explanations like ridiculous. This, which are non-explanations and easily proven false, because if the Earth was constantly rising, then sustained flight would be impossible. The Earth would crash into all flying objects. Okay. So things like this actually made me turn off from the model when I was first investigating it. When you Google it, the Flat Earth Society was pretty much all that came up, and I read their frequently asked questions, which contained this answer, which really just turned me off from the model completely and kept me in the dark for another couple of years before I got into more of the 19th century Flat Earth writings, like Samuel Rowbotham, Thomas Winship, William Carpenter, Lady Blunt, and some others.
Well, they certainly served their purpose in that instance, didn't they?
Yeah.
Now, with anything, of course, there are going to be disinfo agents, especially with something so big as the Flat Earth theory. Could you tell us a little bit about some of these disinfo agents that you have experienced, so we can let our listeners know that not every researcher out there is honest or is coming out with real information, and some of them are coming out with some pretty ridiculous theories, like the moon being a hologram, stars being holograms, and some really weird stuff, to basically discredit any kind of logical, sane argument about this theory.
That's right. So if you've got a 500-year running conspiracy trying to convince people that the Earth's a spinning ball, and someone comes out and is aggressively challenging that and changing people's minds, clearly you're going to have to send in agents to obfuscate and muddy the waters and poison the well, so that other neophytes that are coming into the subject can meet their information first and then be taken down the garden path into nobody land, such as you were talking about with the hologram moon and stars type of thing. So certain of these controlled opposition agents will tell you that the Earth's flat, but the moon doesn't exist. It's a hologram, and it's being projected by aliens and things like this. Okay. So that when you hear this, if this is the first you've heard of the flat Earth and you hear someone saying this, it sounds ridiculous, rightfully so, and then you shut off, and the next time you hear about the Earth possibly being flat, you shut your mind and you know that, well, that's ridiculous, that's that hologram moon stuff, forget it. So there's a lot of people that have come into the movement recently. Well, like I said, the Flat Earth Society has been doing this for decades. The founder of the Flat Earth Society, he always used to go, what's his name? Leo Ferrari. He'd go on his television interviews and he'd bring this big rock and he'd say, "Oh, I just went to the edge of our flat Earth and I nearly fell off, but luckily this rock saved me.
Oh my
God. Crew and my ship fell over the edge, but thanks to this here rock, I've made it back to you alive to tell you the truth, and the truth is that the Earth is actually flat." And he'd talk like this, and he'd say this, he'd bring that rock, and so this is their tactic. They claim to be flat earthers, but then they just say the most ridiculous nonsense, so that anyone that listens to them assumes that flat Earth is ridiculous nonsense. So yes, not all flat earthers were created equal. Not all flat Earth research is the same. Tread carefully as you start looking into this, because there's many pitfalls set up to deter you from finding out the truth of the flat Earth. Right. Things like the constant, rising Earth to account for gravity, or the hologram moon, or all this other nonsense. And if you want to check out some of the people that we've compiled evidence for that they're not genuine flat earthers, on the ifers.boards.net forum, you'll find a bunch of threads dedicated to these not so genuine researchers as well.
Now, I've noticed that ever since you came out with that compilation of different documentaries and video clips, I think it was something about did it say the Jew World Order, or what was the title of it, Eric?
Adolf Hitler versus the Jew World Order. Yes.
Now, I noticed when you put this out, obviously very controversial subject, I noticed that a lot of the, flat Earth, the other guys, turned on you really, really quickly when you started to mention Jewish control and, Jewish supremacy and the Jew World Order, the lies we've been told about World War II. And that, to me, just outed them as complete shills if they're going to start attacking you for telling the truth. What do you think about that? Do you think that these people have been set up to be gatekeepers, basically, to, allow people to talk about the flat Earth, but not about this, and to kind of steer them in a certain direction away from the obvious truth?
Yeah, definitely. I see it like you do as well, that they're, not only are they disagreeing about, say, Jewish control or whatnot, that they're violently against it, and that they've decided that I must be a shill because I'm speaking about this. So basically, they're saying the same thing we're saying, but the opposite. So we're saying that the fact that I would mention the Jewish power makes me genuine, and they're saying it makes me a shill, whereas we're saying the opposite. So it just got to research. That what I'd say to people who haven't figured this out yet, if you haven't figured out that there is a group of people who think of themselves as God's chosen people and are actively and have been actively manipulating world affairs to make it so that everyone who's outside of their little tribe is enslaved to them, and they become the masters who don't have to do any work and are just served by the rest of humanity, which they believe was created for that purpose. And of course, that's Judaism. It's one of the world's oldest religions, and it has very much to do with this spinning ball nonsense. Yeah. As I said, the Freemasons are the ones who have undoubtedly been behind this, and Judaism is who's undoubtedly behind Freemasonry, as has been said by many Jews and Freemasons alike. You can just Google the word Judaism and Freemasonry, and all the top links that come up will be Jews and Freemasons themselves saying so. You'll find their symbology and rituals to be similar, if not exactly the same. And so what I think that is going on with them calling me a shill because I dare to address this point is because if the flat Earth does need to be exposed, the idea is to just run NASA under the bus, but not Freemasonry and definitely not world Jewry. Yeah. They could disband NASA and say, okay, yeah, that was a big hoax, whatever, let's move on, and keep the secret society control going. What they don't want to do is have you point the finger behind the curtain and see the little Wizard of Oz running around doing his thing. So I think that's that's what they're here to do. They're here to make sure that only NASA gets run under the bus if this has to get out. Don't you dare go to the Freemasons or the Jewish power system and expose that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. People have a really, really hard time just admitting that it's the Jews. And, people think when I talk about this that I am, a genocidal maniac that wants to genocide all of the Jews, and it's all of the Jews, it's every single one of them. Obviously, no, I'm not saying that. There's Jews that are completely ignorant to what, their elite are doing, and they're just regular old people just working and going to school, so I'm not saying that. But it's because they have this victim role that they have injected into all of our minds with the Holocaust and, anti-Semitism and, everyone's against us, that people have that emotional anchor that's been put into them when they hear the word Jew. They want to just get defensive and protect them and say, oh no, why are you trying to say it's all the Jews? But, this is a Jewish conspiracy. If it was Muslims, I would say it's Muslims. If it was Christians, I would say it's Christians. It's Jews. And that's all I'm saying. It's the facts. You can look into it. And I would highly encourage people to get their emotions out of the way and look at this logically, because all of the information is out there. It's very obvious. They say it themselves. You don't have to really search much. They quote. You can look at quotes from them saying exactly what we're saying right now, proving that, they control the world. So just wanted to say that for anybody that's listening and might be, thinking that we are completely awful people and hateful and we want to kill all the Jews, because it's definitely not that. And that often is used as an argument to completely shut down any kind of real debate.
Right. Yeah, the Jews have been kicked out of 109 countries in the past couple thousand years, which is something that can't be said about anybody
group. Else. Right, and you're trying to tell me that they didn't deserve it, any of those 100 and, whatever it was times that, everyone's just mean to the poor Jews, and they didn't do anything, they're persecuted, come on.
The last 2 times they've been kicked out was out of Nazi Germany and out of Arab countries,
Yep.
So... And we see, what have they done with their Holocaust myth that they've woven ever since being kicked out of there? They're making Hitler into this demon.
Right.
Every year in school I was taught a Hitler unit where you're just taught that he was the most evil person that lived. I believed that through my, public school education until I came across information to the contrary. And they did a great job about making people think that Hitler is somehow a bad guy and that the Jews are somehow victims. When you look through actual history, you'll find that the Jews are anything but victims, and Hitler was more of a response to Stalin and the Jewish Bolsheviks under him, or over him, who were trying to take over the world. And nowadays they're saying that Hitler was trying to take over the world when Hitler was just trying to free the world, really.
And preserve his people.
Yeah, absolutely. He offered peace. He offered disarmament dozens of times to every country that was involved in the war, and they just didn't agree to them, didn't agree to the terms, and then the winners write history, so we've now been taught that Hitler was the aggressor, and Hitler invaded Poland, and Hitler did this and that, and there's just so many myths that we've been taught about Hitler. Yeah, he escaped to Antarctica, he snubbed Jesse Owens, his father was a Rothschild, he got money from the Bushes.
Yeah.
They've gotten all these little myths they've woven into the story. He burned down the Reichstag.
The best one is that he's a methamphetamine-using homosexual. That one's hilarious.
Yeah, right? So many stupid theories about Hitler, none of them holding water whatsoever.
Right, exactly. It's the complete opposite of everything we've been told with most things today. We're told as children that Hitler was a white supremacist who wanted to exterminate everybody else and they were the master race. But really, if you look at it, it's the Jewish supremacists who believe they are the chosen people, that they are the master race that needs to rule over all of us Goyim. So,
exactly.
Again, everything's been flipped upside down. Like you said, the winners write history, and Germany lost very badly. So, I think we know.
The Nazis weren't the supremacists. Of course, Nazi is another, like a derogatory term for
They didn't even call themselves that.
Exactly. So it's just yet another derogatory term I've got to stop using. They put these things in us so that like you said, just the word Jew, it incites this feeling. And then you say anything that's considered critical of them, and they say anti-Semite, boom, and then another keyword hits your ears, and all rational conversation has to end.
Exactly.
And it's the same with a Holocaust denier.
Right.
Oh my God. And of course, the king of them all, flat earther.
Dun,
no.
Dun, dun. Yeah.
Conspiracy theorist. All you do is theorize. You don't have research.
Right.
So they have all these keywords that just condemn us without no facts. They're not putting any evidence forward.
It's all emotion. It's all emotion-based. Yeah. Neurolinguistic programming is very effective, very powerful, and it helps if you control the media in Hollywood, because all of our ideas and images of what history is comes from Hollywood. So how perfect that they can rewrite history, and those images are ingrained in our brains, and it basically rewrites our reality.
And of course, Hollywood was started by a group of Jewish immigrants and remains under Jewish control until today.
They don't try and hide it.
They don't even try to hide it. They brag about it openly in their magazine. There's a Jew in Hollywood magazine writing about it, saying that not only do Jews obviously control Hollywood, they can't believe that he has to write the article to tell everybody, of course we do.
Right. Exactly. It's very, very obvious to anybody that's really just using their brain. All of this information is out there. You don't really have to do too much digging. Just look at their own quotes. They brag about it all the time. They brag about how they are behind immigration into European countries, which is really just invasion. They brag about how they run the pornography industry and they want to destroy Christian values or Western values. They brag about it all the time, so you really don't have to do too much digging to prove your point. Just go on the Jerusalem Post or, Haaretz or one of those publications, and you'll find a ton of information to show people.
Exactly. Yeah, you just listen even to the various prime ministers of Israel. Some of the quotes that they've said just shows their psychopathic mindset and their tribal mindset, that they're sadistic as a whole. Again, people will say another little caveat that, well, it's Zionist Jews, not all Jews. Now, of course, my issue here is that the end goal of Judaism, God's chosen people to rule over everyone, that is Zionistic.
Exactly.
So to me, it seems like these supposed anti-Zionist Jews are just the controlled opposition within there to make it seem like it's only these Jews and not those Jews. You can be mad at these ones, it's okay, but don't be mad at these ones. But if you look at it from the perspective of that they're all reading the Torah, following the Talmud, that they're all following this ideology that they are God's chosen people, and that the Goyim, Gentiles, everyone else are to be their servant, and this is what their holy books tell them. The Zohar also gets into. So whether you're a supposed Zionist Jew or just a regular Jew, to call yourself a Jew means that you're calling yourself part of this supremacist tribe. And that's what people like me and Hitler have a problem with, is anyone claiming that, I just decided I'm God's chosen and I'm better than you and you have to be my servant as a result. And that's what we're working towards actively and have been for thousands of years. And that's exactly why they've been kicked out of so many countries. They go in, they take over the media, they take over the banking system, they do another thing known as Jewish ritual sacrifice or Jewish ritual murder on their high holy days. They'll kidnap children and perform bloodletting rituals and even make bread with their blood. Sounds disgusting, sounds unreal, sounds like a vampire fiction story, but this is where vampire stories came from in the first place.
Exactly.
This is what they were talking about. Why do you think the cross makes a vampire, scared? The Jewish Messiah, the Christianity is the controlled opposition, I would say, to
I agree
Judaism.
with you there. Yep, definitely. And with Christianity, it's such a passive stance to take. Turn the other cheek, love thy neighbor, forgiveness.
Such a religion.
It's to weaken the white people and to get them further away from their ancestral belief systems. And it's completely Semitic, and that's why it kills me when I see good people getting conned into Christianity. But you brought up a great point with people saying, oh, well, it's the Zionists, it's not all Jews. That is a complete bogus explanation there. And I think they do the same thing with the Khazar theory. Oh, but it's only these Jews, it's not the other Jews. When really, it's the whole ideology, the whole supremacist religion that we have a problem with. If someone was to say, come out of a Jewish woman's womb, okay, and they're technically a Jew, and they were to renounce Judaism and, to say, I don't want anything to do with this and go off on their own way, I would completely respect that. And I wouldn't, say, oh, well, they're a Jew by genetics and blah, blah, blah. Personally, I wouldn't want them in my country or to live with them because we know their track record. I think they have their little place in Israel that they can go to. But, that's just me.
Like you said, they try to play it off like it's some sort of race, or that it's in their genetics. When in reality there's Ethiopian Jews, right. There's Jews of every race, of every color, of every nationality all over the world. And so it's a religion. It's like Christianity. You can't tell a Christian by looking at them, neither can you tell a Jew by looking at them. Right. It's, as you said, the ideology which is offensive, and it's the ideology which needs to be shunned. And yeah, I agree. It doesn't matter if you're born to a Jewish woman. All that matters is that you take on this supremacist ideology as your own and live according to it. Mm-hmm. That, obviously, anyone has a problem with. That's the supposed problem people had with the Nazis, right. The National Socialists, is that, they wanted a pure race and they thought that they were better than everyone. Not at all. Again, right. They were a response to someone claiming this. Hitler's Germany is a response to Stalin. Hitler's ethnic pride is a response to Jewish supremacism.
Right. Yeah, and I do, in some instances I do think it is a bit genetic. I think there's been a lot of inbreeding that's gone on amongst Jews. Mm-hmm. And you sometimes can tell that they're Jewish just by, their eyes being close together or a big nose. But sometimes you can't. And,
well, I think
it's weird.
It's in the Khazarian and Ashkenazi Sephardic deal where certain, depending on where they came from, there's those traits that came from a certain area that have held, the ethnicity of that has held on.
Right.
But when you take it down to the deepest rung, I think what Judaism is a psychopathic tribal ideology. Yes. And that's what we have a problem with, not some race, not some ethnicity. Yeah.
And I think what binds people to this psychotic religion is the circumcision ritual, the genital mutilation and trauma as an infant on the 8th day that rewires the brain, and it has lasting implications, and it basically changes a person from the beginning. And to have these people believing that their God requires sacrifice of their own. I mean, if they're snipping off the foreskins and sucking on the bloody, mutilated penis of an infant, their own child, and then what are they going to do to us? I mean, they call us goyim, which is cattle. We all know what people do to cattle. Most people. I personally don't eat animals. I know you don't either. But what do we do to cattle? We kill them and we eat them. So, how do we know they're not doing the same to us? They're in charge of everything. They're in charge of Chicago, basically, which is a big meat packing district. And who's to say they're not putting human bodies in the meat? I mean, what a perfect way to get rid of, your dead people that you killed for your rituals. People are probably thinking I'm sounding absolutely insane, but I mean, you never know.
Well, I'm sure you've heard Rabbi Finkelstein, who has said so. Whether we can believe his testimony or not, I don't know, but he has actually said that they do, as I said, they perform ritual sacrifice on our children, and then he said when they're done with it, they put the bodies into the meat grinders at their McDonald's and other plants, and we make you eat your goyim children, and he laughs about it. Mm-hmm. Now, whether you can take that as being true or not, I don't know. Again, like I said, I want evidence, not just somebody's testimony, but that is right from the mouth of a rabbi himself. And throughout history, if you watch that documentary, Jewish Ritual Murder, they give so many examples, endless examples over the course of hundreds of years where Jews have been caught kidnapping and murdering and eating children and drinking their blood.
Yep.
And so, I mean, this is in the historical record, and it's something that needs to be looked at, as well as what you said about circumcision. Mutilating a baby on the 8th day is disgusting, that you would cut off a part of their most sensitive organ when they just came out of the womb. If you watch a circumcision, I recommend everyone watch them, as I recommend everyone watch Slaughterhouse and what happens to animals. Especially if you eat meat, you should see what goes on so that you can eat that meat. And you should see what goes on in these Jewish circumcision rituals, and how they suck the bloody penis after it's been cut, and the baby is just crying and writhing in pain. It's absolutely disgusting. And the pedophilic rabbis doing this, they look like they're so enjoying it. And, it's terrible. And then you've got ritual kosher slaughter, which is a type of slaughter which the Jews endorse, where the animals can't be given any anesthetic or be, a bolt gun to the head or anything that, they call
humane slaughter.
Humane. I love that.
What an oxymoron.
Humane slaughter, exactly. It's such an oxymoron that you can choose when to end an animal's life.
But if they didn't hurt that bad.
Yeah, well, as long as it's painless, right?
Yeah.
It's okay that we eat their flesh. Yeah. But the way they do it is often they won't let you anesthetize the animal first, so it has to feel everything, and they will turn the cow upside down and then slit its throat so that it has to bleed out, and then all the adrenaline will be released from it being scared, and often the rabbis will even whisper a prayer into the ear while it's dying. And so this is when you buy kosher meat or you hear about kosher products, this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about one of the cruelest forms of slaughter. And National Socialist Germany was very much against this, and Hitler created some of the first anti-vivisection and anti-animal cruelty laws in the world. And he was a vegetarian, and he had plans of making Germany the first vegetarian nation, hoping to shut down slaughterhouses and ending kosher slaughter. First and foremost.
But I thought he was the most evil man in history. Wait a second.
That's it.
I personally think that that consuming the flesh of another animal is Semitic in origin. I really don't think that this was something we as European people practiced. I think we were heavily influenced, and people are very defensive about this issue. I understand it. I was too at one point, and people think that if you don't eat meat, you're trying to be better than them or something, but I really don't think it's obviously not natural for us. We're not designed to eat meat. Other people will argue against that, but I think that we're so removed from the process now that people have no idea where it even comes from, and they're not aware that the hormones released from the animal, the fear, the adrenaline, you're consuming that. You're consuming that dark energy. You're consuming that pain, that torture, and then we wonder why our world is so disgusting. We wonder why people are so unhealthy. Well, we're consuming death and torture. So, death in, death out.
Absolutely. Yeah, human bodies were designed to be frugivore herbivores. Yeah. They claim that we're an omnivore, or some people even claim to be carnivores because they eat so much meat. But if you look at a chart of your average carnivore, your average omnivore, herbivore, and frugivore, you'll find that we fall completely. Every organ in our body is that of an herbivore, frugivore, not of an omnivore or carnivore. So, for instance, our intestines are far too long to be digesting these meat. Lions and other natural carnivores have straight, short intestines so that they can get the acidic, putrefying meat out of them right away once the nutrients have been digested. We don't digest them well anyway because our stomach acid isn't the right way. The way that our teeth and our jaws are formed. People will say, "Oh, we have canine teeth. We have like 4 teeth.
Yeah, they're so sharp.
They're slightly pointier than others, and so they claim that they're somehow like canines. But if you look at our supposed canine teeth next to actual carnivore teeth, it's completely different. And of course, natural carnivore omnivores salivate and relish the taste of uncooked, bloody, unmarinated meat. so roadkill should not turn your stomach. It should appetize you if you're actually an omnivore or carnivore. You shouldn't have to cook the meat and then flavor it with a bunch of vegetarian herbs and spices to make it palatable so that you can actually eat that corpse.
Right.
So I totally agree with you. We absolutely weren't meant to eat corpses. It's worse for your health. Of course, it's worse for the animals. So you're doing something that's terrible for the planet. It's terrible for the environment as well to have all these animals just in factory farms. And to get the same amount of meat that we get from cows, you can have 16 times the amount of grains or fruits and vegetables on that land. So it's a terrible use of the land. And, of course, the grazing land where these huge paddocks are, where the cows are, it's just nothing but cow dung and dirt for ages. They eat all the grass in the area. It's totally unnatural. They live terrible lives. They're conscious beings. They feel pain when you take their children away. They cry for days. When they're standing in line to the slaughterhouse, you can see them crying. They know what's happening. They try to run away.
They know.
So some of them beat their heads on the railing trying to kill themselves so that they don't have to deal with whatever's to come next because they can hear the cries coming from inside. It's disgusting. I mean, if you eat meat, you owe it to the animals to take a look at what actually goes on to eat them. And I would say every single time, because in nature, if you were going to eat an animal, you have to go find an animal, enslave it, and kill it yourself, and then prepare it and put a bunch of vegetarian herbs and spices on it so that you can find it palatable, and then eat it and say, "You're a meat and potatoes guy. I'm a real man."
So manly.
I'm such a man. I like taking the life out of something and putting it in my stomach. It makes me manly, and it gives me my protein. And you yoga-loving vegetarian people, you don't know what you're talking about. So, I mean, there's plenty of vegan doctors, not vegan first, then become doctors, but doctors first, then become vegan, because they've done, for instance, Dr. Michael Greger has done yearly meta-studies of all the research that's been done on meat versus vegetarian diets, and found, for instance, in a great video called Uprooting the Leading Causes of Death, the 15 leading causes of death, including cancer, heart disease, diabetes, are all caused by meat eating, meat and dairy, animal products, and most of them can be reversed by stopping eating meat and dairy and consuming a plant-based diet. So it's absolutely healthier for you. I don't know how long you've been vegetarian or vegan. I've done it for about 8 years now. I feel the best I've ever felt. I get sick way less. I have way more energy. It's clearly the healthier option. And, of course, you're not contributing to the death of an average of 25,000 animals throughout an average meat eater's lifetime. They kill about 25,000 animals when they could kill 0. Can you imagine having 25,000 beautiful animals, cows, pigs, chickens, different birds, deer, moose, bear, all the things that people eat? Imagine having 25,000 of them around you, and you get a knife and a fork and a machine gun, and it's your choice whether you want to eat all of these, machine gun these animals down and consume their flesh for the rest of your life, or you can take a few steps over to the next yard where you'll find lush gardens of fruits and vegetables, which are much healthier for you, and you don't have to, cause the death of any living being. And don't tell me that plants are alive too. Yet another lame argument that people come up with.
I was going to say that.
Well, you vegetarians, you eat the fruits and the vegetables. They're conscious too.
But they don't run away from me when I try to go pick them off the tree. They don't start crying and bleed everywhere when I eat the apple. Right. And it tastes really good. I'm not going to go walk up and find a dead animal and say, "Ooh, that looks good. I'm going to start eating it right now." I don't even need a fork because I'm a carnivore. I don't need a knife. I'm just going to dig in my sharp teeth and just start tearing that skin apart. No one does that because that's not an instinct for us. We see a nice juicy mango or some grapes and I start salivating because I think, "Oh, that's so good. I want to eat that fruit." But I'm not going to stumble upon a dead squirrel and think, "Oh yeah, I think I'll eat that." It has to be put on a plate with some nice little decorations and obviously cooked and seasoned and tenderized and all that good stuff. So yeah, we're definitely, I don't think we are designed to eat meat at all. And I don't think it's healthy, like you said, for ourselves or the planet. Now, I'm not going to not associate with anybody because they eat meat, because I once was there too, and I don't think I'm better than you or anything. People really get defensive when I talk about this stuff. So, whatever. But, yeah, I know we kind of got into another tangent over here, but I wanted to bring up, kind of going back to the disinfo agents as we wrap it up here. When I went on to IFERS, your Flat Earth forum, I saw that this guy, Achensi or Asensi, I don't know how to say his name, who is a disinfo agent, you've come to the conclusion, right?
Yep.
He basically has been paying to advertise on your forum, and when I went onto your forum, it was his name, Achensi, and a waving Israeli flag GIF. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? I thought you didn't know about it, so I obviously messaged you and said, hey, dude, I think someone hacked into your site. But you informed me that this man is paying for advertising space on your site to display the Israeli flag. What is going on with that?
Yeah, it's a free forum, a free message board service, boards.net that I'm using. So their advertising thing they do, they allow banner ads across it. So he's found a way to get his banner ads to go across my forum almost exclusively, and he makes up new ones every week. And yeah, he's always putting his name in there or the Israeli flag or whatever. He's coming up with funny things to draw attention and bring people to his 6 now forums that he's created.
6.
All of them contrary to mine. The whole point, every forum he's created, he proliferates with sock accounts that are just him pretending to be other people, where he takes cut and pastes from the IFERS forum and then puts in his own commentary under them. So most of the hits that he get, I think, are from us because, well, not just he has those paid banners, but we also link to him as we point out the fact that he's obviously a controlled opposition shill doing this. Literally, he's on there all day, every day doing this. So
wow.
he must
paid.
He's paid. He claims to have another job, but it's impossible that he could maintain a job and do all the work he does on all these sites trying to denounce what we're doing on IFERS.
He's probably talking about his job with the Mossad.
Absolutely.
Is he outward, or is he Jewish? Does he tell people that? Or, I mean, because he looks kind of Jewish. I don't know. And then he's, had the Israeli flag, so I figured maybe it was some JIDF coming your way or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I don't know if that's even him. It's only one picture he provides.
Right, yeah, how do we even know?
Facebook profile. Yeah, so I really don't have any idea. I'm deducing that he's controlled opposition based on just everything he's said and done and the way he tried to buddy up and tried to get control of the forum, wanted to close the forum down, and then once we got him off, like I said, he's been on all day, every day for months and months now, creating anti-IFERS forums, trying to detract from what we're doing.
That's funny. Basically just outed himself there by being so ridiculous. Now, the last... actually, I have 2 more questions for you before we close out here, and thank you so much again for taking the time. My second to last question is, why don't you think they want us to know that we are living on a flat Earth? Do you think that there is something beyond the ice wall that you mentioned in your theory? Do you think that this is it here? And obviously, why? Why do you think they don't want us to know?
Well, first of all, it sets them up as the authority. At any time you tell a big lie, you become now the authority, and the person you're duping has to come to you for all of the answers. So you can set yourself up at universities and get high-paying positions and teach people all your lies, and they'll thank you for it and pay you billions of dollars in taxes, as we have in NASA, for the privilege. Right. So first of all, they set themselves up as the authority and run away with all our money. And secondly, they convince us of their atheistic, materialistic, nihilistic philosophy that they've been spouting from evolution to Big Bang to heliocentrism. The capital S scientism worldview that we're being fed is a godless one that comes from nothing. So they say that the Big Bang happened from this godless accident, and everything came from nothing exploding, and all the complex, ordered beauty of nature is just a cosmic coincidence and an accident. So they take out intelligence, they take out the idea of intelligent design and replace it with unintelligent design. They take out the idea of a intelligent creator creating the material world and replace it with non-intelligent nothingness randomly coming into existence and somehow evolving consciousness and intelligence out of that material nature. Mm-hmm. So they're doing away with consciousness and all, it's like the opposite of all religious and spiritual thought throughout all of history.
Right.
Religious and spiritual thought throughout all of history says that we come from some higher, supreme power, some sort of intelligence, because as you can clearly see, the world around us is intelligently designed. It should be a common sense notion to just open your eyes and say, yeah, this is not an accident. There's no way that a mango tastes this good, and music sounds this good, and a sunset looks that good, and, you know, sex feels this good, and flower smells that good, and
right.
It's by accident. It just happened because of a random explosion 14 billion years ago, and then some atoms clinked together and created planets, and water came, and life came out of that, and then crawled up onto the land and became a monkey, and monkeys evolved into humans, and now there you are, the pinnacle of stupid evolution, the modern human.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think that they really don't want us to realize that we are extremely powerful, and they obviously don't want us to have any kind of connection to any higher being or higher power. They want us basically in this whole YOLO mentality. I don't know if you've heard of this phrase, YOLO. It's basically an acronym for you only live once. And so it's this very hedonistic, base kind of pleasure-seeking mentality where you only live once, man, so you might as well live it up. Who cares? You know, go have sex with whoever you want. Go do a bunch of drugs. Who really cares about the earth? Because I'm never going to be back here, so who cares if all the animals are dying and the rainforests are getting cut down? Whatever, man, YOLO. So I hear that a lot, and I think
that's how you want your slaves. You want Absolutely. Your slaves nice and selfish, so they don't worry about freeing themselves and all the other slaves, but instead just worry about their own personal hedonism for the rest of their lives.
Right, and I don't know.
Like Facebook, cell phone generation, the entitled generation, they've definitely done a good job getting us down to our baser instincts and keeping us in the lower chakras, as it were.
Oh, absolutely. Just focused on sex and food, and that's pretty much it. That's what people's worlds revolve around now.
Gossip, television, and these kind of things that aren't going to raise your consciousness or humanity or leave a legacy or give you the kind of life that you want, but rather an obedient slave like they want you to be.
Right. And I've noticed a lot of religions, like Catholicism, for example, is against the idea of reincarnation. And, you know, I don't know what your thoughts are on it. I'm still trying to kind of come to a conclusion myself, but it would make sense to me that, you know, matter is neither created nor destroyed, or energy, is neither created nor destroyed. So, you know, we have to go somewhere. Our souls, the fire, the spark inside of us has to go somewhere, and maybe we reincarnate on this planet. And I think that the YOLO mentality, like I was saying before, leads to apathy and just to not really giving a crap about our lives. But if we were to say, you know, believe that we're coming back here, we would want to set this world up for future generations to be awesome. We wouldn't want it to be crap when we come back. We'd actually have something to invest here on this planet, on this earth, on this plane, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, we're definitely being kept in the dark about, you know, our origins and our true power, and it's a great way to do that by telling people that you're on a little ball spinning in the middle of darkness, and nobody knows why. It just is.
Right. Yeah, if you knew that you were going to keep on coming back here lifetime after lifetime, would you still just watch television and work your little slave job and have your little happy life away from everything? Or would you actually try to make the world better and make things better for everyone else and for yourself when you come on back? In my spiritual science book, I did look into past lives, reincarnation, as well as near-death experiences quite a bit. And it certainly does seem, from the evidence all over the world throughout history, there's these kids that are born and they remember vivid details about their previous life and are able to confirm them. Go back to the place where they claim they were from. They get there and they know the directions. They go exactly there, and they know this house. They know the neighbors. They know the names, the nicknames. They know places that did exist, and you find them in the historical record, but they don't even exist now. So how could they know? There's so many proofs, or evidence rather, of reincarnation being a actual phenomenon that I'm quite convinced, as well as near-death experiencers who all talk about this experience of they die clinically and then come back to life, and in the time when they were clinically dead, they experienced their consciousness rising out of their physical body and living on. Wow. And they could still see, they could still hear. There's even several cases of blind people who are blind their entire life, and when they had their near-death experience, they could suddenly see. Wow. And then when they came back to life, they were blind again. You can see an interview of that on YouTube. It's quite interesting to watch. So this phenomenon proves that our physical senses are secondary to consciousness. Consciousness comes before the physical body. As we were saying, all religions and spirituality throughout history have said this, that consciousness is a priori and the physical world is just an illusion, or maya. It doesn't actually exist per se. Consciousness or intelligence, the mind is primary, and that's what really exists, and everything else is our experience. You'll notice the material world is dualistic. There's up and down, sun and moon, male and female, black and white, good and evil. Every example you can think of, there's a dichotomy here. But God, or where we come from, consciousness, the I am, seems to be singular. So it's like, this is what I think of the eye in the triangle could represent. The I, E-Y-E, as well as the I, the letter I, is at the singular at the top of the triangle, and the 2 points is the dualistic material plane that we find ourselves on now. And so in like the Hindu cosmology, they talk about Brahman and Atman. And so Brahman would be the top point, the I, and that is the I am, like in the Bible, God. I am that I am is the name of God. And the Atman is known as your soul aspect, which is part of and never completely separate from God, but is not God nonetheless. It is your subjective aspect of God, which exists in the dualistic material plane here. So to me, the eye in the triangle, the Masonic symbol, I think it very well may be symbolizing this kind of dualist or Trinity idea of not Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, but rather God, the originating singular consciousness, the I, breaking themselves into this dualistic material world where we all have different I am perspectives, subjective perspectives, but we all actually come from the one I am objective, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, that some people have called God.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really like that analysis. And going back to what you were talking about with the children, I think that children have this ability, almost every single one of them, but I really think that it's, beaten out of them or programmed out of them. I think that children are intuitive seers, and they can see things that a lot of us can't see. And I think through programming in movies and stories and TV shows, whatever, children are taught to be afraid of that stuff as it's paranormal or, it's boogeyman kind of stuff and it's scary. But I think if we really nurtured their visions that they're having and validated them and looked into it and talked with them a little bit more, that we could learn so much. But people are very afraid of it. They're afraid when a little kid says, I'm seeing someone over there that you're not seeing. Yeah, that's kind of weird, but I think we need to validate it and just ask them more questions about it, because they're very, very, very smart, and they're so pure at that age that we have a lot that we can learn from them.
Absolutely, I agree. There's cultures that had that exact viewpoint, that the children were the seers, the children were the true leaders and intuitive ones, and the elders, their job was to question the children. And through like Socratic questioning, they were able to come to amazing, intelligent answers, and to help the kid. Obviously, another word I shouldn't use. Kid is a
goat.
Baby goat, isn't it? Yeah, it's another one of those words. A child. They make a. I've lost my train of thought now.
We were talking about how the elders in the communities would basically ask the children the questions, and then they would draw conclusions from that.
Absolutely. This is how we should be treating children, not shutting down what they're trying to explain to us and saying, no, that's not how the world works. Ghosts don't exist. You couldn't possibly be seeing something like that.
Right.
Even if it is a figment of their imagination, as a parent, it's your job to guide them, not to tell them, and be the voice of authority, especially at something like that. Maybe if they're running out in the street, you can be the voice of authority before they get to your car. But if they're telling you they see something that you just don't see, maybe because you're not as intuitive or close to God, I would say that's another thing. If we're coming from the objective one I am consciousness and coming into this subjective world as a becoming a being of our own, then it is babies, it is children who are actually the closest to God.
Yeah.
They were just there. They're the ones that would remember it the best. So it's a position that should be respected, not looked down on like, oh, you were just born, so you must not know anything. I've been here a while. Yeah, you dumb baby, just crying and smiling all day. You don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. Language makes me so smart.
Right, and who is under attack the most? It's the babies. I mean, they're not even safe in the womb anymore. We're blasting them with ultrasound frequencies that have been proven to be very harmful, yet no one believes me, even though I've provided the human studies. Anyways, the vaccinations, hospital births are just terrible. They're hurting a lot of mothers and babies, and, they are under attack. From the moment they're conceived. I mean, they're trying to pry into the womb and see what's going on and poke in and doing all these tests. I mean, they're under attack.
And cesarean sections that instead of waiting for the baby to be born naturally when it wants to be born, every doctor now wants you to do a C-section so that you can plan it ahead of time, so we can make it convenient for our scheduling purposes. We just cut you open at the belly and do it that way. Yeah. That's certainly not good for the baby. As you said, the vaccinations are terrible, and they've been increasing more and more over time. So back in the day, it was you could do it or not do it. Then it became mandatory. Then more and more became mandatory to the point that it's ridiculous. Yeah. And the preservatives and stuff that are in these vaccines, they found formaldehyde and mercury and all these terrible things. And these are definitely bad. Nobody's debating that these preservatives aren't terrible for you. So that's the real issue. People will be like, "Oh, but you don't vaccinate your children. You're doing something wrong or whatever." Yeah. If they're containing poisons in them that have no safe levels in the human body whatsoever, what are you doing mandating that these things be injected into the bloodstream of newborn babies? Yeah. Makes no sense whatsoever, unless you're looking at it from the perspective you're saying that we're under control by people who want us sick and unhealthy and to pay for the privilege of staying in their hospitals and giving them money to keep us alive on their little machines. I mean, like the cancer industry, for instance. You go to a hospital, all they give you is chemotherapy, radiation, or unnecessary surgeries. They don't tell you that your cancer probably came from a lifestyle of eating meat and dairy, and that it could be totally cleaned up in a few weeks just by eating nothing but bananas, as has happened several times. So, the doctors, the hospitals, they certainly don't have your best interests or your baby's best interests in mind whatsoever. No, they're just doing what they've been taught,
Yep, and I think, kind of going back to what we were saying before, it's our job as, the adults and, as we get older too, it's our job to give them a voice, because they see things that we can't see, but we can say things that they can't say. So it's important that we listen to them and try to really understand what they're trying to tell us, and then give them the vocabulary that they need to be able to articulate their feelings and their thoughts. So it's such an important relationship that it's just completely there's been a wrench thrown in the middle of it, and it's wreaking havoc. And you're so right when you say that babies are the closest thing to God. I mean, they're so pure and beautiful. And to take something like that and to shoot it full of poison, well, that just shows me where our mentality is at right now. We are trying to destroy our connection to God, to consciousness, whatever you want to call it, to the source. And it's not working too well for us, is it?
No, it's not. And to say that a newborn baby needs a polio vaccine and they need the measles, mumps, and rubella, and they need it's like saying that God made a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened before vaccines existed? How did the human race survive without
Everyone
them?
died, though.
They're so important. Oh, right? Didn't you hear?
Yeah.
We're all still alive, but everyone died back then.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely insane. But I guess to close out our discussion here, I wanted to ask you one more thing, and then I wanted you to let everybody know, where to find your material. But my last question for you is, what would you say to the people who claim that you, Eric, are muddying the waters of the hollow hoax, Jewish power discussion? And then I guess they say on the other side, too, that by you bringing up Jewish control, Jewish supremacy throughout history, that you are now muddying the waters of the flat earth discussion. So what would you say to your critics?
Yeah, I guess I heard it from the flat earth side where, they hadn't even been paying attention to notice that I've been writing about Zionism and
right.
Jewish supremacism for 7 or 8 years now, long before I started mentioning anything about the flat earth. So if I'm poisoning any well, I must be poisoning the flat earth well, the hollow hoax well with the flat earth.
Yeah.
But I maintain that I'm not poisoning any wells and that the Holocaust was a hoax and that the earth most definitely is flat and motionless. And so if you look into both of those issues, you'll find there's a good reason that the terms Holocaust denier and flat earther have been so ridiculed, and it's because they're both absolutely true, and they're both key linchpin issues to understanding if we're ever going to shirk off this Jewish Freemasonic Zionist Vatican secret society rule that we've got over us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Eric. If you could just share with our listeners, tell them about your books, your forum, YouTube channel, anything else that you want to let us know about. And I highly encourage everyone to check out your books and documentaries and the forum because they're all very informative.
Thanks. I'm Eric Dubay, EricDubay. That's my YouTube channel. You can find my blog, AtlanteanConspiracy.com, and the International Flat Earth Research Society forum is ifers.boards.net, not to be confused with the Flat Earth Society, which is the controlled opposition group, which IFERS stands in opposition to. You can find my books on lulu.com or through my website. I've got Atlantean Conspiracy, Spiritual Science, Flat Earth Conspiracy, my new book, 200 Proofs the Earth's Not a Spinning Ball. They're free. Most of these you can get free PDF versions online. So just come to the website and you'll find everything is all linked together anyway. Once you find one link, you'll find all the others.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Eric, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I hope to chat with you again in the future.
Thanks. Great talking to you.